I'm Dr. Howie Jacobson, and this is the Plant Yourself Podcast. Each week, I bring you a conversation with someone who's making a positive difference in the world. And for my day job, I help leaders and their teams master their mindsets so they can achieve great things. To find out more, check out the Mindset Mastery Memo, my Substack newsletter. You can find it at plantyourself.com/memo. And now, today's show. Bertus knew that he always wanted to work in healthcare, to help people heal. And as a physician's assistant, he was basically following the medical mainstream. But then his wife developed type 2 diabetes, and it forced him to take a hard look at the limitations of the healthcare industry. The drugs weren't helping, but her doctors kept insisting that the pharmaceutical route was the only responsible path to take. So Lewis decided to do his own research, which is a phrase that is pretty fraught these days, because it can go in all sorts of directions, and some of them are frankly pretty horrifying. But fortunately, perhaps due to his grounding in medical science and perhaps due to his strong spiritual faith, he struck gold. And once he learned that a whole food plant-based diet can actually reverse type 2 diabetes, he devoted himself to spreading the word and empowering people with the ability to get that diet off the pages of books and off the frames of videos and into their kitchens, onto their forks, and into their mouths. So in our conversation, we talk about Lewis's work as a health coach specializing in diabetes reversal. We look at various barriers to change, cultural, biochemical, habitual, and we dive into the primacy of mindfulness as a tool for managing cravings and reducing stress, both as a secular tool, but also one, if you have a religious faith, that you can bring your religion into it. And through a process that he calls STOP, which we go over in the podcast, and how that process can tap into religious beliefs or simply affirmations in the service of improving and maintaining good health. And we also talk about the challenges of addressing health disparities in historically marginalized communities and the urgent need for diversity in healthcare. That is, healthcare providers who look like their patients and who have credibility talking about their lives. Hope you enjoy. So without further ado, Bertus, welcome to the Plant Yourself Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff, but I'd love for you to start just introducing yourself.
Sure. So my name is Bertus. I'm a physician assistant and diabetes reversal health coach, and I've been a PA for about going on 6 years, a health coach for 2, and just always been excited about teaching people about health and reversing chronic conditions.
So, sorry.
Bless you. Yeah, get it out.
We're going to end up having a consultation. I've been sick for like 2 weeks.
Oh no.
I still cough in my sleep, and
I would say it's probably that change of weather. I know in North Carolina here, man, it's brutal.
Yeah. Anyway, I'll try to keep the coughing to a minimum. Even see if I can, mute myself if I am dexterous enough. But
no problem.
So you've been a PA for 6 years, and I know we're going to talk about like the work you do coaching people to reverse diabetes. And there's a bunch of people listening to this who are like, huh, those two words don't go together. That's like, reverse demolition, or like, I didn't know that was possible. There's a lot of people who are like, we know, we get it. How did you come to be a PA? I'm looking at you. I assume you're not in your 20s anymore. You've had some sort of career already. Yeah. So what can you tell us?
People usually tell me I look like I'm in my 20s, man. Like,
no. I meant the wisdom and gravitas.
Oh, got you. Good
catch. You could be 18
from
just visuals.
Awesome. Good to hear, man. Well, so it's been an interesting journey. I think right out of high school, I knew I was going to go into medical field. But I have a very spiritual background. My family grew up in a very conservative church, Seventh-day Adventist church. And I always felt a spiritual calling too. So I ended up studying theology actually in my undergrad.
Oh, okay.
with the idea of becoming a pastor. I always thought I liked the idea of being also able to help people in practical ways. Like obviously Jesus was known as a great physician, so that's why even at studying theology, I always thought, well, maybe I'll become a medical missionary, get training in medicine. Upon graduating, I felt more and more convicted about going into medicine, and so long story short, I just felt like a divine path to becoming a PA. It was a lot went into that, but yeah, I found out that even with a theology bachelor's, I could get a physician assistant master's. It's a great way to get into medical fields because it accepts all backgrounds. So got into PA school, and I did find out pretty quick how quickly physicians get burned out in our medical system, which is what inspired me to transition to a health coach.
So you were feeling that as a PA?
Yeah, big time, man. Because another thing, being Seventh-day Adventist, I don't know if you know much about that faith, but they're very into holistic living. So my dad was like a pescatarian, mom vegetarian for a while. I became vegetarian in my college years. Went back and forth. So seeing my wife have diabetes and going through the medicines, I'm encouraging her to take the medicines, and she can't stand them. I'm telling them they work. They're gonna work. 8 years later, medicines aren't controlling her blood sugar levels. Insulin isn't working. Her diabetes is getting worse. Her symptoms are getting worse. And I'm like, well, if medicine's not doing it, there has to be a natural way, So it was interesting because I saw the same thing happening in my patients, with not just diabetes, but many chronic illnesses. They only get worse with time, and medicines seem like a Band-Aid. Usually physicians like me, they think that it's because the patient's not taking the medicine or they're not being compliant with the diet recommendations, but she's following the low-carb diet recommendations. She's taking the medicines, and I'm seeing a patient, like a perfect example of all my patients at home, where medicine and conventional dietary recommendations are failing her. So I went into a deep dive research for about 2 years, reading nutritional articles and research on diabetes and nutrition, knowing there got to be a way naturally. I felt really deeply convicted about it, and I found that very quickly that a low-fat, whole food, plant-based diet can reverse diabetes, and it's been done, and it's been known for about 100 years, and it is not mainstream knowledge. I'm like, this is crazy. Like, this is something people have known. It's nothing new. I'm not discovering the wheel. I quickly had my wife adopt that. In 6 weeks, my friend, she was off medicine. 6 weeks after 8 years of struggling. I was like, wow. I gotta let my people know. So obviously, it transitioned to everything I knew and thought about medicine.
Mm-hmm. So that's so interesting that you're like pushing the party line of, the drugs are going to work, and if they're not working, it's your fault as the patient. Like, you're not doing something right, and then to kind of pull back the curtain in your own home and see that, boy, that blaming the patient.
Yes.
First of all, it doesn't seem accurate.
Yeah, it does.
Like even if we're accurate, like even if it's true, like, oh, they're not taking, like, I know the compliance rate for like a lot of drugs is like under 50%, especially like high blood pressure drugs or diabetes drugs or high blood pressure, all that stuff.
All those things, yeah.
But still, like, the medical profession basically has a superiority complex around, like, they're stupid or they're lazy or they're irresponsible, and not really asking, like, why are you not, like, what's the experience you're having? And really not trusting people.
It's sad. I mean, there's been surveys that shouldn't be shocking, but, where doctors and nurses have said that when someone's obese or diabetic, they judge them negatively. Those, for a lot of physicians, are the most frustrating patients, in their opinion. And some physicians, there's just a lot of judgment. Just a lot of judgment. You think that the medicine's going to work, and if it's not working, it's your fault. Yeah. But in their defense, right, I did not know anything. I wasn't taught about nutrition in school. We didn't have much nutrition courses in my program. So all we are taught for all our years, obviously, if you're a PA for the 2 or 3 years of your master's program, or a doctor for your 6-7 years of education, all you're taught is medicine. So it kind of makes sense that they think that way. Unfortunately, I don't give them too much rope because the research is out there. It does just a quick Google search, and you could find a lot of information on lifestyle and disease prevention and reversal. Yeah.
Yeah. So can you talk about your wife's experience over those few weeks?
Oh, yeah, sure. So she was actually coming off a keto diet.
Okay.
And it was interesting because it was like the last draw. Like, we were vegan, I should say, and the only thing that was controlling her medicine was extra low carb, going down to 20 to 40 carbs a day, and the rest of her nutrients coming from meat, dairy, eggs, cheese. So she was finally keeping her blood sugars under control. We knew that this is not going to be sustainable, because with the blood sugars dropping, the liver inflammation, the signs of liver inflammation started showing up in her lab work. Her cholesterol levels started to rise. We knew that keto or low carb diets, they may control your blood sugar, but it comes at a sacrifice long term. So when she transitioned, she was really excited. She was really happy to go back to eating, trying out again, because in previous times vegetarian wasn't enough. Because a lot of people think, well, I'm a vegetarian. Why is my blood sugar? Why am I, my blood pressure high? Why is my blood sugar high? And a lot of times it's the fat percentage. So that's what we focused on during those 6 weeks, measuring her fat intake while being plant-based and eliminating processed foods. And keeping it at 10 to 15% was the ideal percentage from my research. So yeah, it was not hard for her, as I'm sure it's been hard for a lot of my clients who have never been vegetarian. It wasn't hard for her. She made the switch like that. Interesting enough, some clients I have, it just takes days or weeks. But for her, I had to encourage her, because it's 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and the sugars are still not controlled. And she's like, Lewis, this is not working, right? I said, just keep up, baby. It's going to work. Persist. Some people, it takes time. You've had diabetes for 8 whole years. It's not going to go away overnight. And that's the thing, that you have to be patient with a change in lifestyle. It doesn't happen quickly. 6 weeks later, she started seeing perfect blood sugars. She had dropped her meds, I think even before the 6 weeks, but her sugars were finally within normal range in that 6 week mark. And yeah, that's when we knew this is it.
And how long ago was that?
So that was actually the start of our business. So the 2 years, about 2 years ago. Yeah.
And so she's if you looked at her today, you looked at her labs and how, does it look like she has diabetes that's under control, or that she just doesn't have it anymore?
Yeah, absolutely. Looking at her lab work, her just even her physical appearance, she lost a lot of weight. That's another big part of it, is getting exercise regularly, getting that energy back. She was able to go into the gym regularly. Her transformation physically and biologically, has been a 180, really. Yeah.
Gotcha. So in some ways, it's easier to work with, your life partner, but in some ways it's harder. It's harder to coach your family. You've got skin in the game. They wonder, what are your motives here, or who are you to tell me, or how did you discover that you wanted to do coaching as opposed to the medical model you'd been trained in?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because my wife doesn't listen to me. she always knows better. I'm the one listening to her, So, of course, family could be the hardest to work with, and it was definitely tough. And it's always but it's interesting, because I I felt really, like I was saying in the beginning, like unfulfilled. I think there's a survey that says over 50% of physicians are burned out, right? I remember, I remember during my preceptor, my rotations, I had a preceptor that, we're going through the rounds and listening to our heart rate, and using our stethoscopes to listen to patients, and coming out of a patient's room, I asked her, did you notice that patient had a slight murmur? And she's like, honestly, Lewis, I don't even listen anymore. I'm like, what? So, like, there's a lot of physicians, I think the reason why it's easy to transition to being, for me, is because I know I'm doing something that's going to work. It's hard because a lot of people get into medicine wanting to make a change. They want to see they want to save lives, transform people's life, give people longevity. And to see that it's not happening, it can be very frustrating. So when I found out that not only can I just maintain, but I can actually reverse diseases, it's all I'm about. And so not just in my practice, but also in my business, I'm able to give people the advice they need. But not just that. When you're in a health coaching setting, you're getting to know your patient intimately. You're getting to see them weekly instead of every 3 months or 6 months, right? You go from having a 15-minute visit to a 45-minute visit. There's so much more you can do as a coach that physicians are limited, in their ability to do because they just don't have the time. Knowing and doing is two different things. So you could tell people what to do, but showing them and guiding them through the process, that's powerful.
Yeah. Now, one thing though you can say about the mainstream traditional medical care is if the person's just saying, well, you have this condition, it's probably genetic, or we don't know why it happens, but here's the meds. There's a way in which that can feel like it's kind of neutral. You're not blaming the person. You're not saying, but when you come around and you say, actually, it's the food, like you're telling people you can change it. People can also hear it's my fault. Right? How do you come across saying, there's power here in a way that people don't feel, judged or start feeling like, oh my God, what have I been doing to myself, or getting angry. Yeah,
that's a good point, man. I never thought of it that way, but I guess the approach I take to help, with that feeling of self-judgment is to, and I can't remember who coined the phrase, but I tell my patients and clients that we live in a toxic food environment. It is not your fault. It's the environment we live in. We are oversaturated in calories. Processed foods are cheaper than healthy foods because, of course, corporate interests. We're not given the proper education on how to eat healthy. And so it is not your fault. It's the environment we live in, and so it's diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol is very normal in this society. Because of this environment, again, this toxic food environment we're living in. So we're reestablishing a new norm, and so I think my patients, they tend to accept that a lot readily than, this is your fault and you've just been eating bad. And when they think about it, it's like, I'm not eating any different than anyone else is eating. And it's unfortunate, genetics does load the gun, as they say, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. And some people's genetics, they're not as friendly towards this normal way of living in our society today. So when people get that, I think it's easier for them to not feel so bad about themselves, not feel so judged, when they realize, okay, wow, this is something that happens to many people and I'm not any different than anyone else.
Yeah. So did you have to kind of become a bit of a revolutionary? Or, like once you burst this bubble, American capitalism, great. We have all this food. It's the best in the world. It's all consumer-driven choice. And then you start, some of the things you mentioned, like processed food is cheaper than the food, the same food before it's processed. And they're like there's some fix here. Like, was there a point at which you're like, what What the heck?
Yeah,
What kind of world do I live in?
yeah, it's education, it's knowledge, it's the knowledge we need, And the more I read, the more I start thinking about things. I think people are realizing this though. You have a conversation with anyone in the street, and they get it. They're like, yeah, that these corporations, this big food, big pharma, has a lot of influence, and obviously they're in it for the money. I mean, of course, you can't wrong them, really. And so,
Right.
unfortunately, like the Bible says, the love of money is the root of everything evil. So you follow the money, you're going to find the evil. And so, yeah, I think I do have to be. That's the exciting part. I do see myself as a revolutionary. Telling people, that we need to change things. We really need to change things in America, and unfortunately, it's being influenced by many places in the world. One thing that's really sad, I tell people, is we spend more money in healthcare than any country in the world, and yet healthcare is the third leading, I think actually the fourth leading cause of death in America, third or fourth. People don't know that. So we're spending all this money, and then on top of that, when we look at our healthcare qualities, we're not top. We're somewhere on the 38 or 40th in the world.
Yeah.
We're in the bottom. Of developed countries, we're on the bottom. So why are we spending more money than any country in the world? Yet we're on the bottom of the list in quality, and our methods are not working. So something's got to change. We have to be, as Martin Luther King says, we got to be the change we wish to see in the world. So it starts with me. It starts with you. It starts with all of us saying, okay, I can't change you or the neighbor or my friend or my family, but I can change myself. So we need all to be revolutionaries in a sense,
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Now, whoever you work with, if they have a connection to a culture, they're going to have resistance, right? Because the food culture of every ethnic group, celebrates some kind of decadent cake or meat or cheese dishes, and it can feel like someone's trying to what are you trying to give me? Quinoa and broccoli?
Yeah.
Like that's not culturally appropriate. Yeah. It doesn't fill me. It doesn't provide me with comfort. There's no associations with family and grandma. Do you find that in your work?
I yes and no, because I do find a lot of cultures outside of American culture, a lot of ethnicities, they do tend to have a lot more plant-based foods in their diet. So I think the hardest ones are the traditional Southern culture, but ethnic, as far as when you leave America, there's a lot more plants in there and other ethnic cultural foods. But even there, you're right. When you're talking to any culture, there's going to be some foods that have to change, that they're familiar with, that bring that feeling of home. But so what I encourage them is that you can still enjoy those foods in moderation, right? It's not an all or nothing thing. That's the one thing that scares people. They feel like, well, if I don't do it 100%, then it's not going to work. But no, it's not an all or nothing thing. The closer you can get to a whole food plant-based diet, the better, right? But it's not all or nothing. It's not like, you can never enjoy those favorite foods again. But what you want to learn to do is not need them. You want to get to the point where, you're making a conscious choice to have them, not a biological drive, right? You want to remove the addiction. Who wants to be addicted to anything, right? So with time, with patience, you could cut the cord of addiction. And then now I choose to have chicken on Thanksgiving. It's not because I must, So that's part of it. But also there's so many alternatives. There's so many ways to enjoy some of your favorite pastries and make them vegan, and some of your favorite foods and just transition them slightly. Traditional cultural dishes that can be vegan very easily, So, and then having them actually try out the cultural recipes that are transitioned to become vegan recipes, and they see, wow, I can enjoy. I can still have fun with my food, and be plant-based. Absolutely, 100%. If you're not enjoying the plant-based food or the diets that come with it, the recipes that come with it, you're not doing it right. 'Cause I'm big on you should be enjoying your food, and you can.
Right on, right on. Yeah, so I'm going to keep peppering you with the objections.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So the biggest objection I found for people who, are tired of diabetes management the medical way is that when you then say, okay, well, you've got to eat like fruits and vegetables, right? That they're like, but I can't. Like that's going to make it worse. Like everything I've been taught is low carb.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a big one.
How do you help people, break their addiction to, adhering to this medical model that even though it hasn't worked for them, still feels like it's too dangerous to give up.
Yeah. So that is hard because there's a lot of re-education that has to happen. A lot of re-education. So I think the proof is a lot of times is the testimonials. When you see people who have been plant-based and they're off their medicine, you can't argue that. Like, wow, how come they're getting results and look at all the carbs they're eating? And anyone can research that online. Look, there's so many testimonials. Not just in my business but in others who are doing mastering diabetes is huge. They have a huge list. I love watching their videos. People who are doing it are probably seeing is like almost 100% of believing, right? So watch the stories of others who have turned plant-based and have better lab work than you, and then tell me that low carb is the way, but not just that. The second thing would be science, just the science behind it. So I get a lot into the science of diabetes reversal, and when you see it, it's very clear that it is saturated fats particularly, but high fat diets that cause insulin resistance, which is keeping sugars trapped in your blood. Once you drop that fat percentage, you could increase your tolerance for carbs. You'll see that diabetics can eat more carbs than they ever had and have normal blood sugar levels. And there is a science behind it. And so it's a fat. What happens when someone takes insulin? They gain weight. Why? Because the insulin is driving fat into the tissues not designed to store it in excess amounts. So when you realize that, you realize, well, maybe it isn't the carbs, and it really isn't the carbs. And so, it does take a lot of motivating through actual testimonials and a lot of educating through helping them see the science, the biology behind insulin resistance, what insulin does in the body, how high-fat diets can drive and make it harder to respond to it. And that blood sugar levels being high is just a side effect. It's not the cause; it's the side effect of diabetes.
Yeah. So one of the problems I think is that there's a lack of nuance in how the popular media and influencers and even the medical profession and the mainstream media talk about food in terms of low carb, low fat, and it puts it as like fat or sugar. Which one is the enemy? And carbs can mean anything from a fresh salad to a McDonald's Happy Meal. I know so you're not a fan of sugar, right?
No, absolutely not. Yeah. So refined carbs are definitely not real food, whole food. So that's why I love the term whole food plant-based, because what you want the whole food, not the leftovers of the food. I like to say you want to eat dollars, not coins. And how I explain that is like, basically when you think of complex carbs, they're dollars, right? And the refined, highly processed, refined carbs or sugar is coins. So if I were to ask you, to tell you that you can only hold a certain amount of weight in currency every day, would you choose to hold dollars or coins? Right?
Yeah, right.
No-brainer. Dollars.
Give me the paper.
Yeah, the paper is light, right?
Yeah.
Right, in the sense that whole foods, complex carbs, are full of fiber and nutrients that make it more fulfilling, right? More satisfying. You're not going to be as hungry. They fill you up. So it's light. It's, as far as caloric density, it's not high in calories. It's light. Coins or sugar is heavy in the sense that it's full of it's highly caloric, more likely to lose weight, less likely to fill you, right? So on top of so when you think about that, you're going to lose weight, you're going to reverse disease if you're increasing the amount of dollars, complex carbs, and zeroing out the coins. Eating food that's rich in nutrients while low in calories, right? The dollars, while eliminating the food that's high in calories and low in nutrient value, right? Coins don't go very far. So I tell people, eat dollars, not coins. And that's why I compare complex carbs and sugar.
I love that.
Yeah.
What can you say about sugar? Because I know a lot of people I know in the plant-based or vegan community, like, we'll give sugar, like, we would never touch a piece of fish. But like here's a whole food plant-based recipe. It's a delicious carrot cake, and it'll have applesauce instead of oil, but it'll have like 3/4 of a cup of coconut sugar.
Yeah, sugar becomes like the replacement drug, But yeah, we need something to feel good, huh? So why not sugar? But no, sugar definitely does deserve its how you call it, attention. We need to pay attention to sugar because sugar can be a problem. Sugar, I don't care what anyone says. You eat enough sugar, yes, you can get fat from sugar. Of course, fat is already fat, so fat's always going to be more fattening. But sugar can be a problem. For example, is that studies show that if you overfeed somebody with sugar, like candy and sodas, you can increase the percentage of liver fat by 33%. But of course, you take the same calories and fat, and it can go up by 55%. Okay, so yeah, fat versus sugar. Fat is worse, yes, as far as metabolically and of course all the things and metabolic syndrome. Fat's going to be worse, but sugar does not help. I would call, if anything, sugar is a smoldering fire, where fat is the gasoline that makes it worse. Right? They combust together. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess most of the sugar we consume is consumed with fat, right?
Exactly.
Right. So it becomes a kind of a metabolic priority thing where the sugar, our bodies will go, oh, sugar, we know how to do this. Let's use that for energy, and then the fat is just all left over, right?
Stored away. So that's why most of us are struggling to lose weight or come off our meds, because what you're doing is you're forcing your body to say, what, this fat and sugar, I'm gonna use the sugar now, and I'll store the fat for later, because we could use the sugar right now. So sugar is obviously, when it's refined. Again, let's differentiate between sugar and complex carbs, right? So we're not talking about, when we say sugar, we're not talking about fruits. We're not talking about whole grains, right? We're talking about the highly processed leftovers from those processes, fruit cakes and fruit pastries and fruit juices, even things that are left over from the original source of the natural state of that food, sugar. That goes straight to the liver, right? It almost bypasses everything else, goes straight to the liver like a targeted bomb. And now the liver has to process those extra calories. It's more likely to store it as fat, if you have it in abundance, right? And another thing with sugar is that it doesn't stimulate our appetite suppressant system, So you can easily. That's why you think about it. You could down a soda, and you have all these calories, but you're still hungry because the sugar doesn't tell your brain to stop. Sugar doesn't tell your brain that, hey, you've had enough, So you load up on those calories, those coins, and you're not nutritionally full. There's no value.
And is that true of sugar in solid form as well? Because I know our body doesn't really register beverages as calories.
Solid form as well. Yeah,
really?
Form as
wow,
well.
I hadn't heard that.
It doesn't stimulate the appetite suppressant. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got clarity about what people should and shouldn't be eating, and yet when people are under stress, it's really hard to not go for those addictions, to not go for those comforts. How do you help people deal with that?
That's a big one. I mean, when we're stressed, we want to go to the things that make us feel good. We want that dopamine release that makes us feel good from eating sugar or fatty foods. I think, of course, it does take time. Again, it's an addiction you're dealing with, so it's not going to go there. Those cravings and that go-to feeling like you have to go to that go-to is not going to go away overnight. But it takes time and patience. So what I try to do is teach people about mindfulness. And mindfulness meditation is huge. Just the practice of not allowing stress to drive you to action. Too many times you go from thinking to doing, or we're ruminating on the past, which causes stress, or we're worrying about the future, which causes stress. To eliminate that stress or minimize the stress, because you're not going to eliminate stress, but to minimize stress, we need to all practice moments of mindfulness. So, and it's very simple, just being in the present moment, right? Learning to calm our minds and just know the art of being still, right? It's powerful what can happen or what cannot happen when you just pause for a moment, not making a decision, not allowing your thoughts to dwell on judging yourself or others or the situation, and just be still, be present in the moment, right? Recognize what you're feeling in your body, in your mind. How are these emotions showing up? Live in it. Don't act on it. Just live in it. Embrace it. Don't fight it. And embrace and encourage people to embrace their emotions, right? It's powerful. It's amazing how quickly those cravings lose their power. They go away, right? Not to say they're not going to return another day, but you can. It's one battle at a time, and you can learn a lot if you learn to practice the art of mindfulness meditation.
How do you teach people to engage in mindfulness meditation?
Yeah, so it's basically a principle that I learned from, I can't remember the author. It'll come to my mind maybe, but I call it STOP. So STOP is an acronym that helps you kind of practice mindfulness at any moment. So S in STOP is obviously stop what you're doing. Just when you're feeling overwhelmed or stressed, just stop, right? Take that moment to take a break, right? The T in STOP is take a break, right? So take a break take a break and take a breath. Take a breath specifically. And you just, when you're practicing mindfulness, you're kind of centering your mind on your breathing, starting with your breathing, because it kind of centers you on what's going on in your body at the very present moment. So taking a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth, and just feel that oxygenation of your lungs, right? The A, acknowledge that this is a moment where you need to be mindful. This is a moment that you're feeling overwhelmed. This is a moment where you need to be aware of what is going on in your body. So acknowledge and awareness is the A. I said A. I'm mixing up acronyms. So
I think you just jumped into rain, right?
Right. Yeah. Rain. Yeah. I'm mixing stop and rain. Sorry.
Okay.
So you know the book. All right. So yeah. So going from take a breath. I apologize. O is I'm going from stop to rain. Yeah. Rain is another way of explaining this. But O. Okay. So we're on stop, not A. O. Not rain. So O is observation. Very similar to the A actually. It's almost the same. So O is when you're observing. You're going to observation mode, right? And so you're observing what's going on in your body. You're trying to feel what the feeling is, right? Is it tight? Sometimes for me, I get tightness in my chest, so I allow myself to observe that. What is that tightness, feeling? The butterflies in my stomach, I observe it. I sit there and I observe what is going on. Anytime my mind's distracted, I go back to taking a breath. Right? Every time I feel my mind wandering, I take a breath and I go back to observing again. Where is the stress? Where is the emotions going on in my body? How is it showing up in my body? Right? And the P is basically proceed. And proceed, I like to I add a little twist to it and say proceed with promise. I think everyone should have a mantra, a go-to saying, right? For me, it's he makes all things beautiful in his time. When I claim that promise, right, that I believe so strongly in, it empowers me to replace that negative motion, that negative energy with something positive, right? So proceed with promise. So S, stop, right? T, take a breath. O, observe what's going on in your body. Of course, acknowledge that you. And P, proceed with promise. Take a mantra. Some people, for everyone, it's different. You know, one of my last recent client said for his, it's right thing right now. You know, proceed with a promise. And that's what mindfulness meditation. You could do that literally in 10 seconds, 30 seconds. You could do it very fast. So any moment of the day can call for a mindfulness moment.
Yeah. So do you have people sit and practice, like put it in their calendar or beep? Because I find like the irony is the moments that call for mindfulness are the moments that I'm least likely to remember that there's such a thing as mindfulness meditation.
Trust me, mindfulness is a school you never graduate from. Okay, like you never get to the point where yes, I am a mindfulness master. You have to constantly remind yourself, right? And you might find yourself, man, I should. This morning was a perfect moment to practice it, and I didn't. So I mean, I think it might be great for people who want to actually dedicate a moment in their day, usually early morning before they start the day, to meditation and practice mindfulness. But not everyone has those moments. So it's something you have to just continually remind yourself daily. Like anything, it gets better with practice. The more often and more frequently you do it, right? And that's why I encourage people to do it even when they're not emotional, okay? You can do it when you're happy, right? It doesn't have to be when you're upset or sad. It could be when you're neutral, when you're not feeling, you could be feeling like, it's a pretty okay day. And say, you know what, let me just practice mindfulness at this moment, right? You could do it while you're driving. You could do it while you're exercising. You could do it while you're walking. You could do it at any moment of the day. And the more frequently you're doing it, the more likely you're going to turn to it in moments of stress because it's going to be automatic.
Yeah, I would think that if you're only doing it when you're stressed, you're now associating it with a negative. So doing it when you're happy is probably a better way to kind of get it into your neural settings.
Exactly. Very powerful.
So I'm curious because you mentioned your mantra, which seems like it comes from your faith, and I know like in the American sort of Christian tradition, meditation really has been sort of viewed with suspicion. I know there's contemplation, but the idea of meditation was very much associated with Hindu gurus and Buddhas and Shivas, and I'm curious how your faith tradition and your upbringing connects, because obviously you've connected it with the mindfulness meditation. Have they supported
Absolutely.
each other? Was there a point at which you kind of had to synthesize a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And so there's so many scriptural supports for mindfulness. I think a lot of Christians don't realize they support and they agree with the principles of mindfulness and don't even know it. It doesn't matter your religion, what creed, whatever you belong to, whatever you believe in. Mindfulness is something that you can practice. The verse that my go-to verse is the Bible's verse. The Bible says, "Be still, and know that I am God." Be still. Right? And it's such a powerful phrase, because that's what mindfulness is. It's stilling the mind from the ruminating thoughts that are literally destroying us and reminding us that there is a power greater than ourselves, all right? That things are going to be okay. That you survived this, you survived worse, and so it's something there's so many scriptural supports to. I always like to tell the story of Elijah, who was running for his life and ended up in a cave, wanting to kill himself. He wanted to die, and he heard the story goes that he heard the voice of God. It basically was telling him that he was going to show up. He was going to show up and show himself to Elijah. Can you imagine? This Almighty God's going to show Himself. Man, my problems are really going to be solved now. And the story goes that there was a great earthquake, and Elijah looked for God. He was not in the earthquake. And there was a great fire, and there was a great wind, and God was not in the earthquake. He was not in the fire. He was not in the wind. But the Bible says, then there was a still, small voice, and that's where Elijah recognized the presence of God. So a lot of times we think it's a revelation, it's something powerful, but God shows up in the small moments. It's in the quiet moments of our life that we receive power. And that's what mindfulness is giving us. It's getting us to still our minds, still the world for a moment. Be still. And that's what mindfulness is. It's very Christian, if anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, I can't help but hear the paradox in like you can't have a still voice. You either have a voice or you have stillness.
Yeah.
So the invitation to a kind of inner knowing, and I've come to mindfulness. I grew up Jewish, and I come to mindfulness with more of an Eastern bent to it. But I'm sort of seeing if I'm consciousness. Having, creating a body out of consciousness and everyone else is too, then that kind of maps onto, I think, a very traditional Judeo-Christian view of God.
Yes.
Sort of, not bearded guy in the sky, but kind of a universal consciousness that we're all part of and is part of us.
Yes, that's true. And so that's where you're connecting to that divine power.
Yeah. So one of the other things that we had talking about that I'm very curious about is your experience with healthcare in terms of diversity and racism. And what's needed there. So obviously we've talked about like healthcare needs to understand lifestyle and diet, but there's also other issues that you've experienced firsthand. Can you talk about that a little?
Yeah. Unfortunately, of course, African Americans and not only, but there are minorities in our country that are neglected largely. You see it in studies, the fact that when it comes to research, not as much is done in our population. But also very soberingly is that there are many statistics and studies that show that even when it comes to medical practice and medical decision making, that the African American population can suffer. Then you pile that on top of many disparities economically and the food deserts that tend to be, I think it's like 8% of lower income areas that are, or African American areas, I should say, have actually a grocery store in their neighborhood. So it's a very neglected population. So I think that's something that we need to call attention to for sure. Me being African American myself, it is nice that I can bring that diversity to the medical field, and encourage that conversation. And it's amazing how often I could sense the relief when I sit down and I see a patient that's an African American and they see that they have an African American provider. There's a relaxation, like they say, wow, this is. They just I can't describe it. There's a peace and there's a calm to it, because they're not used to seeing people of my color wearing this jacket, right? And so it's been nice to bring that diversity into this field, and we need to see more of it. I think, especially in all medical fields and practices and specialties, but especially in family medicine, where you turn to someone to be your guide when it comes to health decisions. But yeah, diversity, I think, is something very important we need to see more of. We need to talk about the disparities more and, try to see how we can make changes positively.
Yeah, I think representation feels so important because you talked about a lack of representation in studies, and part of that is, I think, due to a longstanding and quite justified mistrust of the medical profession in the African American community. I remember it was 1993, so I was 28 when I first heard about the Tuskegee experiments.
Yeah.
And this was, like AIDS had been going for a while, and I was in grad school, and I had, African American classmates, and they were like critical of the U.S. policy. And I thought AIDS might be a government plot. And I'm like, how can you possibly? What could you think? And then I'm reading there is a long history here that I had never been taught.
Yeah.
I get why there is suspicion, and it seems like
they injected us with syphilis. I mean, come on, how can you expect us not to be suspicious?
Right. Well, I think what I understood about it was that it was just untreated and doing sham, like they didn't actually give them syphilis.
Yeah. Essentially, that's what's happening. Yeah, not treating the syphilis. Yeah.
Right. Not telling people they have syphilis. It's just like, ooh, this is cool. Let's see when they go. Like just awful.
Let's see what happens. But there's a lot of mistrust. Yeah.
And so for someone who looks like you to come in and say, I'm your advocate. I'm not here from big pharma, right? Because there's also like all the people who discover what you've discovered about lifestyle and diet. Also, some part of their brain goes, wait, the pharmaceutical companies are taking advantage of us. They're the ones writing the medical curriculum, supporting all the right. So there's huge amounts of mistrust and suspicion, and it feels like really important for people like you to be, advocating back up the ladder, as opposed to just fulfilling the powers that be and the models that we already have.
Yeah, and I think that's important because it's harder. I mean, it's harder for anyone to accept the, especially doctors don't get the respect that they used to, right? We're not, it used to be that people used to laud a doctor's opinion or advice, but not so much. And anyone, no matter your culture or your color, people don't tend to trust doctors as much as they used to. Not to say that no one does, but when it comes to African American culture, they're even more mistrusting. So they're more. I think they're probably more likely to be skeptical when you say this pill is going to take away my blood, going to lower my blood pressure. This pill is going to help me with my sugars. They'll accept it, but they'll be a little skeptical when it comes from, unfortunately, a white face. There's no other way to say it. But I mean that's something that I feel is definitely something I feel called to stay in medicine for. I could always make the transition and leave medicine, but I want to stay here to be a representative of my culture.
Yeah. And I think there's also the issue of like just mirroring, like looking around and seeing whatever you see around you feels normal. Like I've had, New York City Mayor Eric Adams has been on the podcast twice. He's in some hot water.
Yeah, right now. Yeah.
But I think his heart is in the right place around health, and he's talking about like growing up, and just everybody in his family had diabetes.
Yeah.
Like there wasn't even a thought of like, oh, is there something I can do? It's like, the way you think about, oh, I have old aunts in their 70s. Maybe one day I'll be in my 70s. It was like that inevitable.
Yeah.
That that everyone gets diabetes, and so this idea, you come in and say it doesn't have to be this way. There must be a pretty high bar to clear just to get people to to proceed with promise, as you said.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Proceed or promise. Yeah, that's right. And so I think that's what's unfortunate when you're around, when everyone has diabetes, it becomes normal. Mom, when I get it, it's not a big deal because everyone has it. Whenever around you has high blood pressure, is on medications, has a laundry list of medications, it becomes a norm. So, breaking out of that when you see somebody in the family who's doing something different, right? Someone in your neighborhood, someone on your block, then you realize, wow, there's a different way, So you realize I don't have to. I love the eagle and chicken analogy. You never heard that story? Eagle and chicken. So, there's an eagle that thought he was a chicken because he grew up with chickens. So he ate with the chickens, ran with the chickens, plucked like the chickens. And then one day he sees the eagle flying, right? And he doesn't realize, that could be him until the eagle comes down and shows him how to fly, right? And he realized all this time he's been an eagle. So, I think we need to see people who are flying. We need to see people who are doing it differently. Then we realize, hey, why not me? And so, we equate ourselves with our environment. So if everyone else is struggling, we're going to struggle. And unfortunately, that's what happens. I think this is more about classism even than racism, really. When you're in certain classes or certain areas, that are struggling financially and health-wise, you think that's normal. You think you just accept it. You don't know any better. But when you see somebody who looks like you, who is like you, and they're doing something better, something different, and it's inspiring, it teaches you that you can fly,
Yeah, and I think it's so important, as we started out by talking about your role as a coach, that all of us, whether we're a VA or a coach or whatever, all of us who are living into this healthy new reality, adopt a kind of a coaching mindset, so that, because it's easy to look at someone who's doing something right and go, oh, that jerk.
Yeah.
Like, they're so judgmental. They're always telling me what to do, or, oh, what a goody-goody, as opposed to, like, how do we, embody and model this healthy way of being in a way that invites, right? How do you be the second eagle?
Yeah.
That doesn't make the first eagle go, get out of here. Don't give me ideas. Off. Yeah, all right.
Yeah. So, I think that's the power of being a coach, because you become friends, right? And someone's more likely to take the advice of a friend, I think, even a professional, at times. But, when they see, you kind of come down to their level, when you're a coach versus putting on the white jacket, right? As a coach, your coaching is about coming alongside with you and walking with you, and not just leading you, right? So a coach is going to say, hey, yeah, I know, I've been there, I've been through that. I know that struggle, right? I think a coach can only be successful if he struggled the same way. I know, and I'm sure you know the struggle. You've been through that struggle yourself, right? You know what it means to be overweight, to struggle with food cravings, to the lack of knowledge. You were there, and so it becomes more you taking their hand and reassuring them that I was there, and I was in your shoes, and I know it can be done.
Yeah, and I think I've come to think it's more general than, like, I can coach people on things that I have not struggled with, as long as I come across as a vulnerable human being.
Yes.
Right. So it's not necessarily that, I have to have weighed 420 pounds, but, like, I have been overweight. I have been addicted to junk food, but I can also coach someone on something else by saying, this is, like, life is hard. Like, this incarnation is not for sissies.
Yes.
I get, like, I'm not judging you. I get it. That your body and your mind has reasons for all the things you're doing that you think you shouldn't be doing. Like, it's trying to protect you. It's trying to keep you safe. It's trying, like, if you're talking about, like, the meditation, like, stop and feel these butterflies. Like, I would rather eat chocolate than feel butterflies. Yeah. Right? I don't need, right? I got enough problems. I don't need butterflies too.
Right. Yeah, it's scary. It's scary to people is having to pause and feel what they're feeling. It can be scary, But yeah, you're right. I think that whenever you're thinking about the fact that you're a human, it qualifies you. Yeah. I'm qualified to talk about this. Why? Because I'm human. Because I struggle. We all struggle, and we're being able to walk this path together. As the saying goes, you want to go far. So if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with someone else.
I love that.
It's so much easier when you're someone.
Yeah. Hey, how can people find you? Who should reach out to you? How if someone's listening and they're like, I'm not sure if Lewis can help me.
Yeah.
How do people think about that, and how do they get in touch with you?
Sure. So diabetics, of course, whether you're type 1 or type 2, and you're looking to lower your medications or come off them completely, then I would be the person that can help you do that. But also anyone who is, struggling with transitioning to a whole food plant-based diet for weight loss, or coming off blood pressure medications, cholesterol medications. I have worked with people who are on the verge of dialysis, kidney failure. What I love about this lifestyle, it basically can reverse or prevent 95% of chronic illnesses. So if you're looking to come off medicines, I'm the one. But diabetes is what I specialize specifically in.
Okay. And do you work with people in person or online?
Good question. All online. So I have a virtual platform, and we meet once a week for 3 months, and with a possibility to extend if people need to, but a minimum of 3 months that we work together online.
Gotcha. And how do people find you?
All right, so you can find me on through my website, Lewis. It's easy, lewisbertus.com. All right.
You better spell that because
that's probably
there's a lot of Lewises out there.
That's true.
Bertus is not the most common name.
That Bertus is not the common name. So Lewis spelled like the English, Lewis. Last name is Bertus, Bertus. Louis Bertus. And you could also find me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I'm on most of the platforms. If anyone wants to reach out by email, it's simple too. Lewis@lewisbertus.com. Lewis@lewisbertus.com. That's it.
Awesome. Yeah. So I'll drop this in the show notes as well. So if people want to click the link, they can find you there.
All right. Awesome.
Lewis, thank you so much for taking the time. This has been a really fun conversation. I find my like jaws hurting a little bit because I feel like I've been smiling a lot. So
it's good. It's good.
Like you transmitted some great spirit to me.
I appreciate that, man. So I just thank you for the opportunity to talk with you. I don't know if I left you the link for the free recipes. I don't know if I gave you that for people who want free recipes. Should I give it to you in the chat here?
So I know on your website there's an offer for
there should be offer. Yeah. I have
280 free recipes.
Yeah. That's on my Facebook page specifically. If anyone wants free recipes, they can join. They can look at it on my Facebook page. So find me on there. The name of the business is Diabetes 180. Oh, right here. But you could probably find me quick with my name first and last.
Okay.
But they can get free recipes if they're interested in starting it off on their own.
Tease us with 2 or 3 of your favorite recipes, just what they're called.
Oh yes, I love my chili bean soup. Oh man, that's that's one of my go-tos, especially in these cold times. And then man, there's so many that I like. So for me, one thing I always go to because I'm really pressed with time is my tofu salad. Oh my goodness, yeah, it's good.
Okay, is that cold?
Yeah, cold. Yeah, I prefer it cold. Yeah, but it's good. Good in the morning. It's getting cold outside, so I might warm stir fry the tofu first. Yeah.
All right. So chili beans. Is it soup or stew?
It's stew. Yeah, stew. Yeah.
All right. So tofu salad. They both sound very comforting and filling.
Absolutely.
All right, Louis Bertus, thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you for all you do. It's been great getting to know you.
All right, likewise, man. Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, peace.
Peace.
And that's a wrap. Show notes at plantyourself.com/608. Good weekend. We had our Bravas Ultimate Tournament, the fundraising tournament for the whole club team, the Porro, in Castelldefels Beach, and people came from all over the world. It was a hat tournament, so your name got thrown into a hat, more or less. And some people on my team were from Italy, Germany, Czech Republic, Egypt, UK, France, and me from the US, and a couple from Spain. And it was a lot of fun, a lot of games, and we had that Dana. That I'm not sure what it stands for, but it's a Spanish term for this relentless rain that just keeps going and doesn't stop. And we've seen in Valencia some of the tragic consequences of that. We had that here, not nearly to the same extent. It was not. I don't believe it was life-threatening for anyone in the Barcelona area. But today's Tuesday morning. I think there's still people who are trying to leave from Barcelona airport on Sunday afternoon and are still here because the runways were flooded, flights delayed. And anyway, we were out in the rain trying to play in that for a while, but then lightning forced us all indoors. And I felt kind of bad for the families who are out for a quiet off-season breakfast at a cafe on the beach, and all of a sudden to have 150 sweaty, dripping Ultimate Frisbee players with their gear all huddling and cramming in and talking very loudly. But that's over. Got some good exercise in there. they actually sprinted. So I feel like the sprint training that I'm doing with Jay on the beach is paying off. We're doing decreasing intervals between the runs. So 30 seconds, catch my breath, 20 seconds, 10 seconds. It's brutal, and it seems to be working. So I don't know when the next tournaments are going to be. One in February in New Orleans, still thinking about. And then there's a whole bunch coming up in winter and spring here in Spain. That's it for this week. As always, be well, my friends. Let's take this home with some gratitudes. First of all, thanks to Mama Earth. You have been so very, very good to me. Second, Will Ridenauer donated the use of his beautiful song Sabali Dong as the theme music for this show. You can find out more about Will's music at willridenauer.com. Third, thanks to all the patrons of the Plant Yourself podcast for your financial support. You can read the names of all the patrons at any show notes at plantyourself.com. If you would like to become a patron to show your gratitude for the work I'm doing and help support it, you can do so at plantyourself.com/gift. That's GIFT, all lowercase. And finally, I want to thank you, the listener, for making all of this possible, for giving me a reason to reach out to people, to have conversations, to edit, produce, publicize. All the stuff that I do is for you, so that we can continue to have conversations and continue to ripple out healing and transformation into the world.